without fear, favor, or prejudice. What we deduce from the study of this institution is that it was always meant to be a mechanism that provides a quick and easy access to justice for the ordinary man and woman on the street, while exacting accountability on public officials as an addition to apologies, I had a hiccup there, don't know what happened.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, DPP.
You can hear me now? Okay.
Perfectly, yeah.
Okay. If I may just start off, what we deduce from the study of this institution is that it was always meant to be this mechanism that provides a quick and easy access to justice for the ordinary man on the streets. I don't know what's happening. I keep on losing.
No, you are here. We can
hear. Okay, you can hear me.
Okay.
Exerting accountability from the public officials on an addition to tracking and in addition to traditional checks and balances such as courts, the legislature and the executive. Specific to this orientation is a means to vindicate rights with a view to entrenching access to justice. It takes the character of a quasi-judicial avenue which deliberately lacks the sophistication that has become the hallmark of the courts, but commands the power to be just as effective in respect of leveling the playing field between the haves and the have-nots. A judgment of the Constitutional Court, which is the highest ranking forum in terms of the hierarchy of courts here in South Africa, underscores this point in the most succinct way yet, in that seminal ruling, which is known as the EFF versus the Speaker of the National Assembly case, it was acknowledged that litigation tends to be the preserve of the well-heeled. This is to say that the average person would not have the financial muscle to afford and pay lawyer fees, in order to access justice. The state, on the other hand, has all the money in the world to defend its actions, however unreasonable and unjust. This is why the services of the ombudsman come free of charge. Further, unlike with the courts, apologies, I keep on losing my document. Okay. Further, unlike with the courts, a complainant doesn't need to understand the law in order to access justice through an ombudsman. All they need is the knowledge and understanding that they have been wronged or robbed of what they are entitled to. Ombudsman institutions is at least of the countries having their staff complement qualified and experienced investigators, most of whom are lawyers. They do all the interpretation of the law, conduct legal research, and apply the law to the fact of each case of the matter, and are able to assist the complainants to achieve the end goal in a just manner. All that citizens and residents of our respective countries demand of us is the ombuds in the world, in addition to being responsive, expeditious, and empathetic to their plight, is independence, impartiality, and that we do our work without fear, favor, or prejudice. To this end, I'd like to quote from this EFF matter, put in simple terms the idea that underpins the South Africa version of the ombudsman, and I would like to believe that the essence of this judgment finds resonance across the global ombudsman community. The court said the following, I quote, "The tentacles of poverty run far. wide and deep in our nation. Litigation is prohibitively expensive and therefore not an easy exercisable constitutional option for an average citizen. For this reason, the fathers and mothers of our Constitution conceived in a way to give even the poor and marginalized a voice and teeth that would bite corruption and abuse excruciatingly, and that is the public protector, the embodiment of a biblical David, that the public is who fights the most powerful and very well-resourced Goliath, that impropriety and corruption by government officials are, I unquote. With those few words, colleagues, I wish you a fruitful and rewarding seminar. May we take from insights that will place us in a position to help put our respective countries on course, to entrench a culture of good governance, the upholding of the rule of law, and an unwavering commitment to respect human rights. Above all, may the lessons we draw from this session help us contribute towards the attainment of the Africa we want, ideal as articulated in the African Union's Ambitious Agenda 2063 Development Plan. With that said, colleagues, I really wish to convey my sincere apologies that I'm not in a position to stay with you throughout this session. We are releasing our annual report tomorrow, as well as our cases for the term. Therefore, we are in a session where we are finalizing our reports. I have advised Frankie and really passed on my sincere apologies, and I really wish you a fruitful discussion further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I can take over from here now.
Yes, yes.
Good morning to each and every one of us, Your Excellencies. This is a good moment for us to be able to have a discussion in this webinar meeting that we have today. Thank you, Professor Brian. Thank you, Advocate Koleka, for your remarks. We really appreciate it. But before we proceed and before we release you, Advocate Koleka, please allow us, because you've just advised us that our public protector lost her mother and she's just about to be buried in the course of the week. I would request each and every one of us to take a moment so that we honor the mother of our public protector, and to be able to pray that she'll rest in peace. Kindly, let's take a moment. Thank you. Thank you to each and every one of you. I believe now we can allow Advocate Koleka to go back to the other duties. And we know that without the public protector, you have a lot to do, so you're released. Thank you so much, Your Excellencies, for finding time to be present. Thank you, for finding time to be present. I understand some of you, it's 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning. It's around 11:22 in Kenya. So we're going to try and keep time so that now we're able to catch up with everything that we must do. And I'm going to make sure that we observe the minutes that we've been given for the presentations. You understand what we are supposed to speak to today. We have received your presentations and we appreciate that you took time to be able to prepare those presentations, and we are going to benefit a lot from your presentations, and everything shall be okay. Today's meeting, of course, is about the concept of the ombudsman. Professor Brian has told us that at times we even ask, why is it that we have to discuss something so simple? But I think we as ombudsmen must be able to engage each and every day on what we do and the impact of each of the institutions that we serve to the people, to the citizens that we serve. And we need to be able to exchange notes, compare notes, because our institutions have different mandates. So we need to be comparing notes and see how far we as the ombudsman are doing our part, the relevance, as we've been told by Professor Brian, of our institutions to the citizen, and how we support each and every citizen in our respective countries. And with that, members and speakers and facilitators, I will now welcome the first speaker of the day. The first speaker is Honorable Member, and she is Miss Victoria Perman. She was appointed as Bermuda's second ombudsman, effective March 17th, 2014. She's the former president of the Caribbean Ombudsman Association and serves as Caribbean Director and Regional President for the Caribbean and Latin America of the International Ombudsman Institute, to which she was elected in 2019. Prior to her appointment as Ombudsman, Ms. Perman worked as a litigation attorney from 1993 to 2014, with 16 of those years at Jury's Law Chambers, where she was a founding partner. She was called to the Bar of England and Wales by the Honorable Society of Lincoln's Inn in 1992 and to the Bermuda Bar in 1993. She served from 2001 to 2003 as a government senator and junior minister. She has served as a member of the Bermuda Bar Council and on the Board of Governors as the Bermuda College, and chaired the board of Alma Mater, the Aldous Education School. Ms. Perman holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from American International College, Massachusetts, USA, and a Bachelor of Laws degree from the London School of Economics. She has also served on various public boards and tribunals as the Justice Review Committee and Law Reform Committee. She is the proud mother of 18-year-old Simon. That is Honorable Victoria, and I think, Victoria, you and me have lots in common, so we need to share a lot. You've served in the bar, you've served as in Parliament, so that's my journey that I've walked. And with that now, allow me to welcome Madam Victoria so that she can speak to us. Madam Victoria, Honorable, you're starting as of at 11:26 Kenyan time. The floor is yours, Madam.
Good morning, everyone. The whistling sounds you hear in the background are the tree frogs of Bermuda entertaining you this evening. I thank you to our host at the African Ombudsman Research Center of the African Ombudsman and Mediators Association for organizing this important webinar. I bring you warm greetings from your colleagues in Bermuda and also the Caribbean Ombudsman Association. I extend greetings on behalf of the International Ombudsman Institute, Caribbean and Latin American region. I acknowledge regional colleagues, the Public Protector of South Africa, Busisiwe Kobane, a Public Protector for Zambia, Carolyn Sokoni, and IOI Regional Director for Africa, Ombudsman for Malawi, Martha Chizuma. Modern ombudsmen trace the institution back to the first Swedish Parliamentary Ombudsman in 1809. But it is worth remembering there are much earlier examples in history of redress for individuals with grievances against official action. From ancient times, there have been examples of arrangements for bringing complaints against official decisions to the attention of someone with authority to freely and independently intervene and, when necessary, challenge official actions and decisions with clear outcomes. Africa's ancient Egypt, in the time of the pharaohs, appointed complaint officers attached to the royal courts to hear grievances. Provision for redress for official actions is neither new nor invented in Europe. Responsible, responsive, efficient government does not just happen by magic. It is tied to essentials of good governance, and these are important to the work of the Ombudsman. Ombudsmen promote good governance as they aim to help it flourish. The rule of law, which is self-evident, and the public having access to what the government is doing for its people and how it is doing is what we call transparency. Explanation of government's decisions and actions are accountability. Part of the principles require being responsive, being efficient, and being effective, which is the topic we are considering this evening. The Office of the Ombudsman for Bermuda is a relatively young office. It opened in August 2005. At the official opening of our office in January, then Premier of Bermuda, the Honorable Alex Scott, concisely summarized the concept of the Ombudsman and good governance. And I'm very proud to say that I've not heard it summarized any better. We view your office, he said, as a cornerstone in the great structure that is good governance. By investigating complaints to determine whether the government is doing things in a fair and proper way, and by learning from what went wrong and translating recommendations into action. You are not only improving governance in this way, but you are improving people's everyday experience with the government. The Ombudsman institution is a means to good governance. It provides oversight, which makes good governance more than just words. Good governance is about what happens, not about what is said. It's how people are actually treated and how they feel in relation to their government. What makes governance good is when people feel valued, protected, and respected. This is an acknowledgement that good governance is connected to action by ombudsmen and others to help both the public and public officials to do things right, correctly, and fairly, and where things are not right, to help put it right. Our institution has grown globally in response to the needs of our times, especially over the past 6 decades. Its inclusion as a part of the supreme laws of our countries and our constitutions acknowledges the need for it due to the expansion of government control in all areas of our daily life. The notion that an ombudsman only investigates unresolved complaints by the public concerning government agencies is too narrow and, with respect, is out of date. We are a critical part of the structure providing access to administrative justice. Our institutions promote good governance through overseeing delivery of service and government administration. The resolution of individual disputes is one main contribution. Investigation of complaints is a means of protection of the public from adverse actions. The ability for complainants to safely voice complaints under our protection is also a key contribution. Our contribution is that authorities know we are here, which serves as an incentive to public officials to improve. Critics have often called ombudsmen toothless tigers because we do not have powers to enforce compliance of our recommendations. However, Professor Victor Ayani has wisely said, if you see a tiger, you do not wait to see if it has teeth or not. People can be disadvantaged in obtaining services, which may be cut back in difficult times, or where there are emergency situations, such as this COVID-19 pandemic. Good working relationships with officials within our jurisdictions are important, and it is the Ombudsman's responsibility to seek to build them while jealously guarding their independence and their integrity. These two things cannot be compromised in any way, as they go to the heart of the authority we have been given to call out wrong decisions and wrong actions. An ombudsman does have a superpower, though, and that is to be persuasive. Combat and conflict are not the preferred methods of ombudsman. Our process is the opposite of adversarial. If we find ourselves regularly utilizing courts, we have lost our home court advantage. In the aftermath of a difficult time, when his administrative conduct has been challenged and successfully subjected to judicial scrutiny, President Mandela said the following: even the most benevolent of governments are made up of people with all the propensities for human failings. The rule of law, as we understand it, consists in the set of conventions and arrangements that ensure that it is not left to the whims of individual rulers to decide on what is good for the populace. The administrative conduct of government and authorities are subject to scrutiny of independent organs. This is an essential element of good governance that we have sought to have built into our new constitutional order. An essential part of that constitutional architecture is those state institutions supporting constitutional democracy. Amongst those are the Public Protector, the Human Rights Commission, the Auditor General, the Independent Electoral Commission, the Commission on Gender Equality, the Constitutional Court, and others. It was to me never reason for irritation, but rather a source of comfort when these bodies were asked to adjudicate on actions of my government and office and judged against it. One of the first judgments of our Constitutional Court, for example, found that I, as president, administratively acted in a manner they would not condone. From that judgment, my government and I drew reassurance that the ordinary citizens of our country would be protected against abuse, no matter from which quarters it would emanate. Similarly, the Public Protector had on more than one occasion been required to adjudicate in such matters. This statement was given at the International Ombudsman Institute Conference in Durban, South Africa, 2000. The Ombudsman, where it is established, declares that a jurisdiction believes in principles of fairness, good governance, and the right of the people to be heard and their rights protected. Key principles of good administration are: get things right, be customer-focused, be open and accountable, act fairly and proportionately. Where things have gone wrong, put them right, and a commitment to continuous improvement. An important aspect is to ensure that our own officers are practicing what we are preaching. So while we are overseeing and advocating, we must do it ourselves. If we are requiring those we oversee to cure unreasonable delays, we must ensure that our own officers are handling complaints efficiently. If a complaint before us is about unresponsiveness, complainants should not have to chase our office to learn of developments. When we do this, we lose credibility and damage our own authority. A famous letter giving guidance to a leader states, out of your hours of work, fix a time for complaints and for those who want to approach you with their grievances. For this purpose, you must arrange public audience for them. And during this audience, for God's sakes, treat them with kindness, courtesy, and respect. Do not let your army and police be in the audience hall at such times, so that those who have grievances against your government may speak to you freely, unreservedly, and without fear. All this is a necessary factor for your rule, because I have often heard the prophets saying that a nation or government cannot achieve salvation where the rights of the depressed, destitute, and suppressed are not guarded, and where mighty and powerful persons are not forced to accede to these rights. This was actually written to the governor of Egypt in the 7th century, and it is amazing that this advice is so timeless. When complainants come to our offices or to an authority seeking relief, they should feel welcome and respected. The information that they provide to us is golden. It is valuable. It informs us. We would not otherwise know. Ours is an ever-evolving, challenging, demanding assignment, more necessary in this crisis. No matter how difficult it can be, there is fulfillment in championing what is right. The need for responsive, responsible, effective, and efficient government is critical, more critical than ever before. Many lives are depending on it. We must press for this. It is our duty. Keep safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Madam Victoria. We thank you for that strong presentation. I believe we've been able to listen to Her Excellency Victoria and gotten the points that she's been able to put across to us. One of the things that I've understood is that the Office of the Ombudsman in Bermuda started in 2005. So it's quite a young office that is achieving quite a lot. She's been able to trace to us the origin of the Office of the Ombudsman without forgetting that even before.
So close yours. Okay, thank you. It's very close there. It's water on you.
Unmute yourself, Honorable Kajuju. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Your Excellency Victoria, for that strong presentation. You've been able to keep time, and you've also been able to give us the origin of the Office of the Ombudsman in 1809. But you made sure that we don't forget that during the ancient times, there were ways of redressing issues that arose against public servants or officers that as they were then. You've also been able to tell us that the Office of the Ombudsman is a cornerstone and the great structure that then establishes good governance. You've been able to tell us about what the Office of the Ombudsman is about, that we should actually make people feel treated and how they in relation by their government, that the Office of the Ombudsman is should then make people feel valued, protected, and respected. You've quoted the former President Mandela of South Africa, and it said to him, the Office of the Ombudsman was never a point of irritation, but a source of comfort to the people. And that is why we have the public protector in South Africa. And one of the things that you've also that are picked is it's an important aspect that makes us assure that our officers are practicing what we are preaching. What more important submission did we require other than what Madam Victoria has told us about the concept of the Ombudsman and how we can make our institutions more responsive and responsible to the citizens that we've been called to serve. And with that now, allow me so that we can move on to the next presenter. We'll be able to take the questions after the presentations. And so far we are good in as far as the keeping time is concerned. Allow me, members, that I now introduce the next speaker. Mr. Paul Dube. He was born in Alberta and he spent his adolescence in New Brunswick. He graduated from the University of Ottawa with a bachelor's degree in political science. He received his Bachelor of Laws at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, followed by a Juris Doctor degree in law at the University of Windsor. Over the course of his legal career, Mr. Dube has gained a reputation as an effective advocate for other people, especially the economically disadvantaged. In 2008, Mr. Dube was appointed Canada's first taxpayers ombudsman, tasked with upholding the Taxpayer Bill of Rights and promoting professional service standards and the fair treatment of taxpayers by the Canada Revenue Agency. Mr. Dube was sworn in as the Ontario's 7th ombudsman on April 1st, 2016 for a 5-year term and reappointed in December 2020 for a second 5-year term beginning in April 2021. In his first 5 years as ombudsman, he has released reports on major systemic investigations with more than 200 recommendations, almost all of which were accepted by government. He is currently investigating issues related to complaints about ambulance services, as well as government's oversight of long-term care homes during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's Your Excellency, Honorable Paul from Ontario. We now request you, Your Excellency, to present your submission in as far as the concept of the ombudsman and the institutions therein are concerned. Welcome, Honorable.
Thank you, Ombudsman Kajuju, and dear colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. As you know now, my name is Paul Dube, and I'm the Ombudsman for Canada's largest province, the province of Ontario. And I want to say it's a distinct honor for me to join you today for this discussion, and a special pleasure to collaborate in this discussion with my good friend, Victoria Pearman. It's nice to see you, Victoria. I bring you greetings from the members of the IOI's North American region. The question that I've been asked to address specifically this morning is the following. How can the institution of the Ombudsman be a democracy protection institution central to the achievement of democratic government? As we know, established in Sweden more than 200 years ago, the term ombudsman means people's representative, and the role is to speak truth to power, but also to the people. In 1984, the Supreme Court of Canada decision, which was a seminal decision on ombudsman in Canada, Justice Brian Dixon eloquently summed up the factors which led to the rise of the ombudsman institution. He cited the burgeoning size and complexity of the government, the resulting difficulties that people have in navigating the bureaucracy of government departments and agencies. What Justice Dixon said with authority in 1984 is no less true today, and I quote, "The traditional controls over the implementation and administration of government policies and programs, namely the legislature, the executive, and the courts, are neither completely suited nor entirely capable of providing the supervision that a burgeoning democracy demands. The inadequacy of the legislative response to complaints arising from the day-to-day operation of government is not seriously disputed. The demands on members of legislative bodies is such that they are naturally unable to give careful attention to the workings of the entire bureaucracy. Moreover, they often lack the investigative resources necessary to follow up properly on any matter that they do elect to pursue. The Ombudsman represents society's response to these problems of potential abuse and of supervision. His unique or her unique characteristics render them capable of addressing many of the concerns left untouched by traditional bureaucratic control devices. So I have long defined my responsibility as an ombudsman in a manner that speaks directly to the question I am commenting on today, by saying that the role of the ombudsman is to enhance governance by promoting transparency, accountability, fairness, and a respect for the rights of citizens. I submit to you that in the execution of that mandate, the Ombudsman Institute plays a fundamental role in protecting democracy by enhancing governance through the promotion of transparency, accountability, fairness, and a respect for rights. For a democracy to function properly, it requires political legitimacy. It requires that citizens accept authority and governance by the system or by the regime. The term legitimacy is often positively interpreted as the normative status conferred by a governed people upon the government's institutions, offices, and actions, based on the belief that their government or the government's actions are appropriate uses of power by a legally constituted government. Many people think that the legitimacy of government depends on how it is perceived by citizens. Amanda Green, the lecturer in political philosophy at University College in London, says that if we look closer, it is clear that not just any positive perception will do. I'm quoting her here. There must be positive perceptions of government along three distinct dimensions. First, the dimension of competence. Government must be seen as capable and effective in carrying out its activities. Secondly, the dimension of fairness. Governments must be seen as treating all people equally and impartially, without favoritism or discrimination. And thirdly, the dimension of human concern and personal connectedness. Government must be seen to be sincerely caring about people's welfare. And that, I like to say, is where the Ombudsman comes in. First, on competence. I often say that the focus of my role as Ombudsman is not naming, blaming, or shaming the government or public sector agencies. It's about finding solutions to problems and finding solutions that improve the way that public services are delivered. As an organization that oversees more than 1,000 public sector bodies in Ontario and receives over 26,000 contacts, complaints, and inquiries per year, my office is uniquely positioned to gather information about what is working well in government and what is not. By leveraging our privileged relationship with the citizenry and the information that that affords, we can help government and public sector agencies improve their services to and treatment of citizens. In concrete terms, that means meeting several times per year with government ministries and agencies responsible for corrections, social services, benefits, transportation, children and youth in care, French language services, and much more. To share trends and complaints and statistics, but most importantly, inform them of the impact on citizens of certain policies, decisions, and administrative actions. By proactively sharing information gathered through dealing with complainants without compromising their confidentiality, the Ombudsman can provide government agencies the opportunity to improve their processes and procedures in a discreet and timely manner, certainly more rapidly than an investigative process. And I think that speaks to the proactive strategies that Professor MacArthur alluded to at the beginning this morning, and has been vital to our effectiveness. A thorough and credible investigation, of course, is required from time to time, and the evidence-based recommendations for corrective action provide public organizations with best practices that not only benefit citizens, but the public servants that administer them. Overall, the vast benefits to all Ontarians that result from our investigations and recommendations enhance the competence of government and its ability to serve citizens. Along with thousands of individual complaints we resolve, our systemic investigations and resulting recommendations have prompted widespread government reforms, benefiting millions of Ontarians through improved services, reduction of waste, and even saving lives. Some of these changes include enhanced de-escalation training for police, improved newborn screening, better access to drug funding, overhauls of lottery ticket retailing and property tax assessments, and more supports with for adults with developmental disabilities. So these efforts help make public sector bodies more competent in their service to citizens. And now on fairness, I think it's beyond dispute that many species, including human beings, are hardwired for fairness. Some fascinating experiments have proved that hypothesis. An observation that many have made about human nature is that if people feel a body or an organization or a regime is not going to treat them fairly, they will not fully engage with it. They will not accept its decisions. They will not comply with its rules. In other words, they will not recognize its legitimacy. I certainly made that observation as taxpayers' ombudsman when I saw taxpayers who felt unfairly treated by the Canada Revenue Agency, disputing decisions, filing appeals, engaging in litigation, and even refusing to comply with rules. All because the lack of fairness they perceived eroded the agency's legitimacy in their eyes. And for extreme examples of what perceptions of unfairness can motivate people to do, just look at the protests of Les Gilets Jaunes in France or the storming of the US Capitol recently. By promoting fairness and helping government agencies enhance the level of fairness in their interactions with citizens, the Ombudsman contributes directly to better governance and indirectly to the protection of democracy. As for citizen welfare, remember that we do not advocate for the complainant or against the government, or vice versa. We advocate only for fairness and for better governance. Yes, we expose bureaucratic snafus from time to time, but we also highlight bureaucratic successes. We can validate processes that are working well, just as we can improve them through recommendations. Ministers and public sector leaders routinely welcome our work as a way to break log jams and address long-standing problems, or to validate processes that work well. Rather than eroding the ombudsman role, many liberal democracies are broadening it to ensure respect for human rights, and in particular, the rights of children and prisoners. The vital work of the Ombudsman Institute, therefore, in enhancing governance by promoting fairness, transparency, accountability, and a respect for the rights of citizens, makes government more responsive to the needs of citizens. The resulting legitimacy and perception of legitimacy, in my respectful submission, is fundamental to preserving and protecting democracy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, for keeping time and for very strong submission that has really explained our position in society and ensuring that we do our part. Just in summary, you've been able to tell us that the ombudsman is the people's representative. Other jurisdictions, we are called the people's watchman, the citizen watchman, the public protector, and all these other terms that then define the ombudsman. But you've been able to tell us very strong points that the ombudsman is supposed to speak truth to power and to the people, so that they get to know where to base their complaints or where to right the wrongs that they have caused. You've been able to tell us also the duty of the ombudsman is to protect democracy. You've been able to expound on transparency, accountability, fairness, and your role, the way you've understood it, is not to name, is not to blame, is not to shame government or public sector agencies. Is to be able to point out where they're not doing the right things for them to be able to do the right thing. One thing that has really made me happy about your investigations in Ontario is systemic investigations, because we do that a lot in Kenya. We want to ensure that the systemic investigations that we conduct then, they're able to help government to be better. And you've told us that your systemic investigations help in prompting government to undertake widespread reforms. That's a very good point. But most importantly, you've said the office of the ombudsman is also like, should behave like Caesar's wife, beyond reproach, so that now the citizens and the people are able to have trust in the institution that we are serving. So you've been able to answer the question, how can the institution of the ombudsman be a democracy protection institution central to the achievement of democratic governance? But you allow us now to go to the third speaker, so that now we can come in and our audience is going to ask us questions on what maybe they would like us to expound further. Thank you, Your Excellency Paul. I'll now move on to the next speaker, with your permission. The next speaker is Honorable Chile Ibagwa, and congratulations, Honorable, for the award that you received, as you were told by Advocate Koleka. Our Honorable Chile is a lawyer, a technocrat, an administrator, and parliamentarian. He owns a master's degree in law with a bias in constitutional law, and is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Administrators of London and Wales, as well as fellow of the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators. He was appointed as the Chief Commissioner of the Public Complaints Commission in May 2018 and introduced several innovations leading to improvement in the pace and quality of the operations of the Commission. He also returned to the Nigerian Ombudsman to the international Ombuds arena, where it had been absent for over a decade. In 2018, the members of African Ombudsmen and Mediators Association at their General Congress in Kigali, Rwanda, elected him as the regional coordinator for West Africa, and congratulations for that. In 2019, he collaborated with Governance and Management Services International of the United Kingdom and hosted the first ever International Ombuds Expo in Nigeria. In November 2019, the International Ombudsman Institute nominated him as a member of the Board of Directors, the highest decision-making body of the Institute. Now, Honorable Chile is a man of firsts. He has a first in many things. And with that wealth and wisdom and knowledge, we'd like you to ensure that you impact some of that to the audience. We now welcome you, Honorable Chile from Nigeria, Ombudsman, to speak to us. Karibu.
Thank you very much, dear Secretary General of AOMA, Florence Kajuju. Let me start by expressing my personal condolence and that of Ombuds Nigeria to our President over the demise of her mother. I'd also like to express my appreciation to the two speakers who have spoken before me, the Ombudsman of Bermuda, Victoria Fairman, and the Ombudsman of Ontario, Mr. Paul Dube. You made my work easier because you have addressed most of the issues concerning with the philosophical aspects and definition aspects of ombudsman. So I believe that we're already grounded in those areas, and I will be just flying over those areas of discuss. We have already established the concept of ombudsman being the official who mediates between the citizens and his government. And the personal qualities and characters of an ombudsman have also been established. And as Robert stated, the ombudsman must be independent and politically neutral. Very critical aspects of the ombudsman. That is the only way he can enjoy the confidence of persons who are members of different political parties. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yes, perfectly, sir. Yes.
Okay. So, and then of course the functions of the ombudsman being to investigate and then to make recommendations for review of actions. Then the powers of the ombudsman being to publicize, criticize, and order reversal of governmental actions that are unlawful or inappropriate or unjust in the circumstance. Now, after listening to the ombudsman of Bermuda and that of Ontario, I started feeling very old because the Nigerian ombudsman will turn 50 years in another 4 years' time. So both of them have very young institutions, and I feel very old here in Nigeria, having been established way back in 1975. But I think that the new things share together with the old, and that's the beauty of even this discourse. Now, I'd just simply like to add that in the case of the Ombudsman of Nigeria, the jurisdiction covers not only public office, but also the private sector. So the Nigerian Ombudsman deals with government institutions as well as private institutions, that is all companies that are established in Nigeria under the Companies and Allied Matters Act, and all those that are operating subject to the provisions of that act. Now, having said that, the Ombudsman has clear roles which should aid governance and administration. And the first one I'd like to address is the fact that the Ombudsman, by virtue of the fact that the concept is a global concept, causes nations to realize that they are not an island on their own, but that their actions are subject to standard principles that are exercisable and being practiced globally. And that in itself is a caution to governments, and in the case of Nigeria, to private sector companies. Now, the Ombudsman is a policy interpreter. Just like the courts interpret laws, when a policy is made, whether it's a public policy for the public sector of a boardroom policy for the private sector, it needs to be understood and is, of course, subject to misinterpretation and misapplication. So when such misinterpretation or misapplications occur, it becomes a duty of the ombudsman to properly interpret that policy. And it has always helped to align the intents of the policy with the wordings of such policy. I would say that in the case of Nigeria, when we transited from the direct pension policy into the contributory pension scheme policy, there were clear issues of policy misunderstanding. And the Ombudsman had to work very closely with the Pension Commission of Nigeria, as well as the transitional body setup for that purpose, to ensure that these policies were applied in accordance with the real intents of the law. So it helped to align policies and give clear guidelines to officials that are now implementing these policies. Now, the Ombudsman ensures and protects, as well as promotes equal and benevolent treatment for all citizens' rights and privileges in the circumstance. Like Mr. Dube stated, the operations of bureaucracy are so intricate that the courts have admitted that having a full grasp of the general law alone may not be sufficient to meander through those bureaucratic intricacies, which is the gap that is now filled by the Ombudsman. Because the Ombudsman deals with real issues as they relate to bureaucracies, both in Nigeria, both the public and the private sector. It has a duty to understand those policy guidelines and policy determinations which govern those institutions. So the Ombudsman is better placed to deal with issues of bureaucratic policy implementation. And through that, it also helps to bring out more clearly the intents of those policies to both the policy implementers and then, of course, to the citizens who ought to understand so they do not complain in ignorance. The Ombudsman, of course, is a corrective institution. And Mr. Dube also alluded to that when he spoke about systemic investigations, which is part of what the Nigerian Ombudsman engages in a lot. And in doing so, the Ombudsman is able to prophetically look at issues that are likely to arise in the course of policy implementation, and then to make, to profile solutions or policy changes that will be necessary to realign such policies to the state in which the law is not breached in the course of implementing those policies. Of course, the Ombudsman engenders public confidence in government and governance through the affirmation that governmental actions can be questioned and, where appropriate, remedied. Both speakers who spoke before me also alluded to that. We deal with people of different classes, including those who are indigent. And for the indigent persons, they may not have the resources to approach the courts for remedies to grievances that they have. But because the Ombudsman offers free services, they can at least approach the Ombudsman and are able to receive remedies for their grievances, both against governments, and in the case of Nigeria, against private sector operators. And that is a confidence building, measure that is available. People become more confident that government is not infallible, and that where they go against the law, that there is that independent official who is not accountable to governmental powers, who can question those, breaches and also provide remedies for the citizens. In doing these functions, The ombudsman puts government and governance generally on their toes, because it is very common that public officials are likely to relapse into the exercise of power so much that they only look at their powers without looking at the limitations of those powers. And I had calls to discuss an erroneous concept which was growing in our polity about executive powers. And it was felt that once you say you have executive powers, it means those powers were limitless. But we all know that there's no public institution that has limitless powers, because every institution is established by law, and the law demarcates the boundaries of powers, boundaries of functions, and boundaries of authorities. So it is important for public functionaries and also functionaries of other agencies that may not necessarily be public to understand that their powers are limited by the law that establishes them, and therefore they could not assume such powers as they find convenient and which may be hurting the rights and privileges of citizens. Now, the ombudsman, by its very act, bridges the gap between the citizens and the leaders. In most cases, the leaders may appear so distant that the citizen will not find a means by which he could approach these leaders. In physical terms, most leaders move about in clear protection, and it may not be easy for the ordinary person to approach them. But also operationally, these are persons who are in high places, and it takes a long bureaucratic process to get to them. And the ombudsman fills that gap. And we had also discussed that also a little time ago, because we spoke about government being responsive and responsible. And we had to address that because we noticed that government officials, as well as even the corporate body leaders, think that they do a favor to the citizens when they respond to these inquiries. Now we try to make government officials understand that besides the law which requires a clear timeline to respond to the ombudsman, that is the general spirit that is expected of public officers and persons in our authorities to respond to the yearnings and inquiries of the citizen, whether they're in the public sector or whether they're in the private sector. So there must be a time you must feel responsible and you must be responsive. And by being responsive, I mean be responsive within a time limit that gives positive results, not the response that comes after death, which is medicine after death. And we've tried to, propagate this idea very strongly to public officers so they could know that they do not do a favor to the citizen when they respond to his inquiries or when they respond to his grievances. Now, it also, the ombudsman assuages citizens' grievances and acrimony before they fester into widespread discontent and the breakdown of law and order in society. Renowned international relations philosophers have said countries fight wars because of silence. Because the neighboring country begins to be suspicious why his neighbor is no longer talking. And may just form the idea that, well, maybe he's silently planning, to attack me. And then decides, okay, before he attacks, let me attack back. As it is in international relations, so is it in human relations. When it becomes difficult for those in governance to relate to the people, they may form the ideas of remedies that they can, obtain through self-help. And that normally leads to serious discontent. And that discontent may lead to actual breakdown of law and order in society. But where citizens know that there is a venue, there is an official, that ombudsman, that they can approach and through him are able to have access to the authorities that be. His fears are assuaged. And he can therefore allow the ombudsman to intervene and get results for him rather than resorting to self-help. Now, it is important also to restate that the importance of the office of ombudsman in doing all these functions rests on the fact that all these services are provided free of charge to the citizens. And therefore, those who would ordinarily be unable to approach government can approach government through the ombudsman. Therefore, the office of ombudsman, no doubt, is very, very helpful in realigning policies, bringing governance closer to the people, and making sure that citizens' participation in government is ensured, or at least that the citizens can always receive information from government concerning their concerns. I'd like to thank you very much for your audience.
Please unmute your mic.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Your Excellency Chile, for that presentation. I'm glad to know that you're 50 years old, around 75 when you started the office of the Ombudsman. That means that we can really learn a lot from you. And you've been able to speak to us on what the office of the Ombudsman is expected to do. And you've told us that we are officials who are supposed to mediate between the citizens and government. We are supposed to be politically neutral so that the citizens can enjoy the confidence that is expected. I'm glad to note that from your office, you're able to manage the public and private sector in as far as the issues of complaints are concerned. And you've also been able to tell us that, I didn't know that, of course, the Ombudsman is supposed to be a policy interpreter, so that whenever policies are issued by government and they are big words or they are not able to be understood, then it's the duty of the Ombudsman to step in and be able to interpret. And I believe that is what some ombudsmen do by way of advisory opinions that they issue to government. You've also said that citizens are supposed to be treated in equal and benevolent manner, because we offer free services, so the citizens must be able to access the services of the Ombudsman. We've also been able to be told by Your Excellency that the Office of the Ombudsman is supposed to enable government to be questioned on the decisions that they make. You've also told us about the Office of the Ombudsman is supposed to check the executive, because in most situations, the executive might think that the powers they have and the executive orders they issue are not limited by any law. So it is up to us to wake them up and tell them there's a law that can check, and the Office of the Ombudsman has that duty to ensure that that happens. You've also told us that the Ombudsman is the pathway to approach government, so that now the citizens can use the pathway, which is the Ombudsman, to make sure that government does its part. We are also supposed to bring governance closer to the people, because at times there's that wind path that doesn't have anyone to close when government is up there and the citizen is out there. So it's up to us as the Ombudsman to make sure the institution of the Ombudsman supports the citizen to come closer to government. So that you've set out in your presentation the tools that strengthen government institutions, 10 of them. I request the audience to be able to look at that, because the tools are going to help us to make sure we understand the Office of the Ombudsman better. And that being the situation now, we have completed the submissions of the presenters, or the first presenter, the second presenter, the third presenter. We're able to get insightful submission from Professor of KwaZulu-Natal, the university, Professor Brian. He was able to speak to us about various issues, and the advocate Kolake also spoke to us. Now, I'll request that we look at the questions, Frankie. I can see there are questions. There is one question from which is directed to the Ombudsman of Ontario, but it's written in a language that will require interpretation. So I don't know whether that the translation is available for the question that I can see. The French question is translated. Frankie?
We can move to the next one, Honorable Kajuju, if there's any, and then I'll just quickly translate the French one. Yeah. Or yes,
Okay.
yes. If there's any other one, I will quickly translate this one.
I cannot see any other question except the one that is directed to the Excellency.
I read the question and I can respond to it in English if you like.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Please do that. Do that.
So the question that was submitted in French was, do we encounter difficulties conducting systemic investigations, and do we ever encounter resistance from the bureaucrats whose departments we might be overseeing in the context of a systemic investigation? And it's a very, very good question, a very pertinent question, and it brings me to one of the things that I often talk about is the most important role that I have, or the key aspect of my role as the Ombudsman is relationship building. And part of that relationship building is designed to earn the trust and have credibility with the bureaucracy, and demonstrate that impartiality, and demonstrate that in the work that we do benefits everyone. It benefits all stakeholders. It doesn't just benefit citizens, it actually benefits public servants as well. And over time, building those relationships and building that credibility with the public servants, we can demonstrate and prove that our work will benefit them. You know, my observation is that most public servants want to serve their citizens well. They want to do a good job, and quite often they're hampered by policies or procedures that they cannot change. And we don't often find a problem that a ministry or a department is not aware of. And what I've been told through my experience, either as taxpayers ombudsman or Ontario ombudsman, is quite often bureaucrats, public servants are aware of issues. They would like to change it, but they can't access the resources. Sometimes there's a lack of political will to make that change. And so over time, what our systemic investigations do is shine a light on the situation, and countless times at the end of our investigations, once we publish a report, that political will and those resources tend to materialize. And I've had deputy ministers and commissioners and directors thank me afterwards, saying, once your report came out, once you publicized the issue, once you shine a light on the situation, the minister picked up the phone and said, fix it, or the resources materialized. And that's what I like to call the win-win-win situations that we strive for whenever possible, is that accepting our recommendations will enhance the procedures of that department. They will get fewer complaints. It'll be a more rewarding environment to work within. The citizen gets their issue addressed and receives better service, and we've demonstrated the value of our office. So those are the win-win-win situations that we strive for. And it takes time, but I think over time, if you demonstrate your impartiality and demonstrate the benefit to all stakeholders, and the bureaucracy included, your investigations will be embraced over time. And I have to say that most of the time, departments welcome our investigations, because they have come to know that at the end of the day, when it's all over, their processes will be improved. They will have a better relationship with citizens, and they can get on with doing their core business rather than responding to complaints. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I can see, okay, there's another question that has been asked from Jean. And the question is, any of us can answer that question. can an ombudsman make representation to the La Hague International Court if he or she cannot get redress through the judicial system of his country or a country? I'll repeat the question. Can an ombudsman make representation to the Hague International Court if he or she cannot get redress through the judicial system of his country? I will request that question to be answered by His Excellency, Honorable Chile. Honorable. Honorable Chile.
It looks like we've lost him. Not.
Oh, okay. So do we have Excellency, Madam Victoria?
Yes. Unmute yourself, Madam Victoria.
Frankie?
She's yeah.
Hi, good morning. I was very happy when you called on Chile for that question, because I didn't have a clue what the answer was. What I would say though is that in those countries that have treaties or are bound by the human rights courts, I would imagine that an ombudsman would be a suitable person to bring such an application. Most of the time, ombudsmen are officers of last resort. And so even though I've heard my fellow panelists allude to the fact that, you know, most people aren't able to access the courts because they're either expensive or not easily maneuvered. The fact of the matter is that in our legislation in Bermuda, it actually requires me to stand down until a person has exhausted all available remedies, or there is one provision that I may intervene if I feel that it was unreasonable in all of the circumstances for the person to have sought that remedy. And so I think it's a very, very important question, because I imagine it speaks to the circumstances where all else has been tried in justice and fairness in the jurisdiction and has not been successful. So I would, even though I've never obviously attempted it myself, I can see no objection in the appropriate case for an ombudsman to make such a submission.
Okay. Thank you, Your Excellency, Madam Victoria. I believe that question we can actually continue engaging, because our website is open for purposes of any further questions and maybe further responses that we might want to make. And even Honorable Chile, I think when he comes back, the questions will be forwarded to him. There is another question that has been asked by Karen, and she asks, as a follow-up question on powers, what would be the way forward when courts curtail the powers of ombudsman offices, as is the latest case in Kenya, in the Supreme Court ruling in the case of Vision 2030 board? I think that's something that maybe I'll give some little background. The Ombudsman of Kenya made a determination, and because we don't have powers to make to prosecute or enforce the determination, the beneficiary of the determination went to court, seeking the courts to ensure that the determination is implemented. The Court of Appeal gave us the power to be able to proceed with the determination. Vision 2030, which is a board in Kenya, went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court quashed the Court of Appeal decision that allowed us to have binding powers. So as we speak, the Office of the Ombudsman does not have the binding powers, but she's asking us, what solutions then do we have? Our next point of call is to move to Parliament and seek to amend the Commission on Administrative Justice Act that enables us to be able to function, so that Parliament then can allow us to have binding powers that are going to ensure that we prosecute or we compel institutions to abide by the decisions or determinations that we make. There's another follow-up question to that. Maybe you can engage my office so that we're able to move on and help each other to get where we should as the Office of the Ombudsman. So I'll move on to the next question. There's a question from Frankie. The question from Frankie has forwarded a question from Kebi Akalima. The question is, in case of a complaint from a member of the public about restriction to a facility like health, correction service, or prison, how should the public protector or the ombudsman respond to such a complaint? I'll repeat the question. In case of a complaint from a member of the public about restriction to a facility like health, correction service, or prison, how should the public protector or the ombudsman respond to such a complaint? This question can be answered by, sorry? The question can be answered by any of the panelists without picking anyone. Any of the panelists can respond to that question.
If I may, I could tell you that we deal extensively with corrections. And
yes,
if we get complaints from inmates,
please unmute yourself, Ombudsman Paul Dube.
oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was just in the process of explaining that we get about 5,000 complaints a year from inmates in correctional facilities, and what we do is make inquiries. We ask for copies of files. Quite often they're related to healthcare or access to visits, that kind of thing. And again, we build relationships with the Solicitor General's Department, with the superintendents and supervisors of the correctional facilities, and we make inquiries and get to the bottom of things. And we actually proactively, every quarter, every 4 months, we meet with correctional officials to share with them our observations and to tell them what we're hearing, rather than, and that's a proactive way. That's the proactive ombudsmanship that quite often results in them paying attention to matters, and it's quite helpful.
Frank, you can hear me?
Yes, I can. We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Your Excellency Paul. I'll move on to the next question. Does exhausting or available remedy mean that the complainant must first go to court? I have the provision in my mandate in Seychelles. This is in theory precludes the ombudsman, since most cases have a potential to be taken to court, if only for a judicial review and writ. So this question can then be answered by Her Excellency Victoria. Hope you've got the question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
It is an excellent point, and as I pointed out, my legislation does require me to intervene as an office of last resort. However, the reality of the situation is that we know the high cost of court proceedings, and in my jurisdiction, I can't foresee anyone going into the Supreme Court of Bermuda for a judicial review and coming out under $75,000 US. And so even though that requirement is in place, as ombudsman, I'm required to take a realistic and a fair view of it. And on the basis of that, having a remedy that people can't actually access requires me to intervene even where court is available in theory, but not available in practice.
Okay. Thank you, Excellency Victoria. We'll move to the next question from there's a question there from Tangui. How to make it easy for ombudsman to realize recommendations, as most of them are not in the power to do so. So this is a question that is asking whether, how should we make the office of the ombudsman more stronger so that we can realize the recommendations that we make as the office of the ombudsman. And I think this question can be answered together with the one from Marion, where Marion, a question from Madeline, from the, okay, for the office of the ombudsman to achieve its mandate, it must have some powers. I wish Honorable Paul to comment on this, on the issue of the power of the ombudsman to be able to pursue and ensure that the mandate of the ombudsman and the determinations are implemented. Please, Honorable Paul, would you respond to that?
I'm having trouble hearing. There was a lot of noise in the background. I think I understood the question to be, what can you do to have your recommendations implemented? Okay. I do not have such a power to enforce the recommendations, and I'm happy that way. I am pleased that way, because it keeps things more informal. And if I had the power to compel anyone to do anything, then I would have to develop formal processes like a court, and that would deprive me of my flexibility and my responsiveness. I heard a brilliant woman from the United Kingdom at a conference a few years ago saying, our power is in our voice. And that's how we get our recommendations. It's that power to publish and publicize, and the follow-up is very important. So traditionally, when we issue a systemic investigation report with recommendations, a key recommendation will be that that department or that ministry report back to us every 6 months on the progress in implementing our recommendations, and we will publish that in our annual report. And so for all of the systemic investigations that we've done for the last 15 or 20 years, those that are not completed, obviously the 15-year reports, the recommendations have been implemented, but some of them take years to implement. Some of them are quite extensive, the recommendations. And so every year in our annual report, we will do an update on where the ministry or where the department is at. And so it keeps the light of attention, it keeps the public focus on where the government is at in implementing our recommendations, and it holds their feet to the fire, and it is quite effective in persuading and convincing and nudging that department to continue with the implementation of the recommendations.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Yes, Madam Victoria.
May I please also comment?
Yes, please do.
I had the distinct pleasure of attending the first International Ombudsman Expo in Abuja in October 2019. And I recall while there was quite, I think, a groundswell from my colleagues in the region who were pressing for ombudsmen to have binding power. And I realized that every region is different, and we are not, as an organization, homogeneous. And so, so I say this with all great due respect, but I actually agree with my colleague, Paul Dube, because once you create a situation where an ombudsman has the right to investigate and make the recommendations, and now also compel enforcement, then you are seriously shifting where the organization has its true power, as I stated, which is its power to persuade. I realize how frustrating it can be when carefully made investigation makes recommendations and the authorities are slow to move. But I believe the more apt power is the moral persuasion that we have, and utilizing the other tools such as the media and the outcries of the public to try and get the administrations, the government administrations, focused on them. Once, as I said in my presentation, once you start to put yourself in the court, you've basically lost, I think, a lot of your power of persuasion, and you do find yourself inadvertently adversarial position, which we really and truly are not. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think that then sort of answers the question that was asked by Fatima from Morocco on how can ombudsmen react in case the administration refuse to ensure that the recommendations they have made is implemented. I believe Your Excellency Paul and Your Excellency Victoria have been able to give us the views from the different sides of the story. I think the big question is whether the ombudsman should have enforcement mechanism, or we should let that to the soft power engagement, publishing the determination, so that now there can be some sort of embarrassment if the authorities do not comply with that determination. I think that's all with questions. I don't seem to see any other question. I don't know whether I'm right, Frankie.
There is other question, but I'm sure they will be answered because of the time. They will answer them and submit them to our website. So we'll extract them and send them to speakers who will answer them, and then we'll post them on the website.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Frankie, for that advice. I think at this point in time now, is just to wrap up our conversation that has been quite engaging. We've learned a lot. We've heard from Professor Brian on the relevance of the existence of the Office of the Ombudsman. We've just been advised by Advocate Koleka on behalf of the Public Protector that our business is to ensure that justice is, in as far as the public accountability, is quick and easy to the ordinary men on the streets. She has told us our duty is to ensure that justice is served to the haves and have-nots. Her Excellency, the first speaker, Victoria, was able to guide us on the cornerstone of the Ombuds institutions, that we are the ones that make sure that the great structure that is good governance is then implemented. She's told us that our duty as well is to make sure that the people that we serve feel valued, protected, and respected, so that now they can have faith in the institution. We've also earned our submission in summary from our second speaker, Excellency Paul, who has told us that our duty is not to name, to shame, and to blame, but our duty is to make sure that the public sector is duty-bound to the people. He has told us about systemic investigations that he does quite extensively in his office, and that is something that I think all of us should be able to learn from him, because systemic investigations then is able to address issues of maladministration, is able to address issues of corruption and curtail the actual misconduct that might happen then. We've heard from our Excellency Honorable Chile on the issue of who is the ombudsman as a mediator between the citizen and government, and that we should not be an island. The ombudsman should be open, transparent, and available to the people whom we are supposed to serve. He has also pointed out the fact that we are supposed to enable government decisions to be questioned. So that's being a wrap-up of the submissions that we've been given, the presentations. It's my duty now to thank each and every one of us from AORC that have facilitated and ensured that we have this forum. We thank the Office of the Public Protector, the chair of AORC, for availing herself to be present through the Deputy Public Protector. We thank and we feel honored, personally I feel honored to have been the conductor of this train and being able to speak to strong men and women of this world. Madam Her Excellency Victoria, thank you for your presentation. I've learned a lot on the various ways about what has been said by other people who are there before us and how you conduct your institution and ensuring that you do your duty. Thank you so much, Excellency Paul, for all that you've been able to teach us. And thank you so much, Excellency Honorable Ochile from Nigeria, for being a man of fasts and able to tell us that we should do our duty to serve the people of that you've been given that duty to serve. So with that, Frankie, I think I've taken the opportunity also to thank each and every panelist, each and every speaker, each and every person who has participated to be able to make this presentation a success. And of course, not forgetting the various, the audience that was able to interact with us, ask questions. We hope that we've answered your questions and you've been advised by Frankie. If there's a question that is out there that we've not been able to answer, feel free to engage us on your website. We'll forward your questions to the various speakers that have interacted with us today. And I can say for sure, you're going to get the answers that we are able to give. So thank you so much, each and every one of you. Thank you, take care. These are COVID times, and I believe that we shall be protected. Stay safe and God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you so much.
God bless you too.
Okay. Thank you. Bye. This is the end. We thank you so much. Much appreciated. Bye-bye. Bye.